So I wanted to start. I met you ladies over Zoom call, and we talked, and I got to meet everyone. And when I woke up this morning, I pray about everything. Everybody knows that knows me. I said, I want to open up with a quote that I feel is a summation of you guys as a collective and as an individual, because the stories are varying, but they're all amazing that you accomplished it. And what came to me was, for I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope in the future. Jeremiah 29:11. So I want to just congratulate you ladies for just doing the book, for getting it done. And you guys each have 3 minutes. Leonisha Davis, I'm going to start with you to introduce yourself, tell us about your book and what you want people to take away from reading it.
My name is Leonisha Davis. My book is Drop the Picture and Hold Your Light. It's about my life, married to an NFL player, but like it's been said, I went into the relationship damage because I was hit by a truck when I was 2, almost died, backed over me in the front yard. I wasn't in the street. At the age of 4, I was raped by my 16-year-old cousin. And at the age of 6, I heard my mother say that she didn't want me. But the thing about my story is when my grandmother raised me, my paternal grandmother, and she told me that my husband, who's standing in the back, his name is Andre Davis, and she said, that's your husband. We started off as friends in high school, and I was like, no, why would God do that to me? And no, it's a twist to it. Because my cousin that raped me, his name was Andre. So it was all about the name. And so my story is just about my life and how God helped me to overcome my past, and even with the name, to let me know there is no name greater than his name. Amen. So it's about healing, deliverance, forgiveness, and restoration.
Awesome.
Amen.
You guys can clap for that in between everybody, because these ladies are a walking testimony of seeing something through. Behind every story, there's a challenge, there's a mountain, there's a what if, there's a what not, there's a maybe. There's so many things. So just you guys, I'm going to keep saying well done, because sometimes we just need to hear well done. So, Kim, introduce yourself.
My name is Kim Mathis. I'm born and raised in Dallas, Texas. Woo woo! So, welcome to my city. My husband is a retired 10-year veteran, defensive back Kevin Mathis. We played Dallas, New Orleans, and Atlanta. But my story is, I was born into this world a dope girl. That means a victim of my mom's tumultuous addiction.
You're amongst family, and I need you to know that your vulnerability is not your challenge, it's your triumph.
Doing what God said.
And we here, so let's do it.
Born into this world a dope girl, a victim of my mom's tumultuous addiction with heroin and cocaine. I lived the majority of my adult life in emotional rehab, trying to heal from drugs that I never digested into my own body, but drugs that cause so much pain, anger, resentment, fear, shame. And I was sick. But my secret was my mom was a homeless drug addict who lived on the street. There was no NFL connection or amount of money that could change that. It was a life that she chose, but it was a life that also chose her. And I say that because how many of you know that you are as sick as your secrets? But healing begins when we can show up as our true, authentic selves. Nobody wakes up one day and decides, I want to be an addict. Everybody in this room has been affected by addiction in some way, whether you know someone or you love someone. But I will encourage you to extend grace, because addiction is an outward language of an inner unhealthiness. And people that are addicted are suffering silently, very loud. So it is up to us to extend that grace. Nobody knows better than them. So it has been my life's mission to bring awareness to addiction so that we can stop criminalizing it and throwing people in jail, but start treating it for the mental health issue that it really is. Because addiction is an outcry of something internal. It needs medicine. It needs a doctor. It doesn't need a jail cell. So I would just encourage you to understand that people that are addicted to drugs are not bad people. They made a bad choice, but that bad choice came from some other alternative trauma. And we're all dealing with trauma in some way. And everyone up here is beautiful. And I've heard a lot of people talk about showing up as your authentic self. But when you're addicted, the whole point of getting high is to mask the feeling of being down.
Right.
So imagine that dichotomy. The whole point of getting high is to mask the feeling of being down. So that are addicted are not doing this because they're just, careless or reckless. It's a cry. It's a mental health issue. There's something else going on. And so many of us often say, that's my brother. He just crazy. He just do that stuff all the time. I try to talk to him. No, they don't need you to keep reminding them about the mistakes that they made. Nobody knows better than them. Nobody is more ashamed than they are. But it is my hope that if you know somebody that's affected by addiction, that you would love on them, that you would extend that grace, because without a support system, their recovery is virtually impossible.
Thank you so much for that. So, come on next. Introduce yourself, please.
Whew, that was heavy. Kim. My name is Vanita Reed, and on January 2nd, I lost my brother due to COVID. He was a police officer here in Dallas. He was only 54 years old. And on that day, I realized I needed to finish everything I've started. I started writing this book many, many years ago, and this was first on my list. It's called Flags, Fumbles, and Touchdowns. I met my husband in college, where he was a football player, and I was a cheerleader. And we were married, and I continued to cheer for him at every football game. I struggled with what to wear, too. I didn't want to wear all those heels and, all of my little suits and dresses. He asked me, where was I going, to the Essence Festival? And I said, well, that's what all the other ladies are doing. And he said, just be you. So I said, well, I want to wear your jersey and cheer. And I made friends with the fans. I was closer to the fans than all of the wives. But as I continued to cheer for him and walk out of the stadiums with him, nobody was cheering for me. They were only cheering for him. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm educated. I think I'm cute. I think I have talent. Nobody is cheering for me. And he was like, get the bags, get the kids. And I'm walking behind him, and I was beginning to lose myself. And so I want to encourage you all to stay true to who you are and don't lose yourself. And guess what? Be your own cheerleader. Grab my book so you can learn how to continue to coach not only your family to success, but coach yourself to success. Because guess what? God has work for all of us to do. Be your own cheerleader, ladies.
That's right. Introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Sydney Jones. My husband's name is Sydney Jones as well. He's a corner for the Seahawks. Yeah, so we're both Sydney Jones. And my book is A Country Girl's Guide to Thanksgiving. So it's a cookbook. That was the first book that I put out, and then I did an Easter one. And how this all came about was prior to us getting married, I was very independent. We grew up in different cities, so I stayed back. I lived in Dallas. I had my permanent makeup career. I was making a lot of money, and he was in Philadelphia playing football. So we kept everything pretty much separate. We would see each other on and off. And when we got married, I had to move and go to Philadelphia, and then we got dropped from Philly, and we went to Jacksonville, and that was all during 2020 and our first year of marriage. And it was the first time in my life that I wasn't making my own money, or I should say as an adult. And I kind of went through like an identity crisis where I was like, I don't feel like worthy I don't feel like I'm doing enough. I don't feel like I'm playing my part in the marriage. And then on top of that, we had been trying to have a baby, and that wasn't happening, and it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be, and so I really kind of sunk into this hole. And I had our first Thanksgiving together, and it was a total disaster because I was not prepared. I was 3 hours late for dinner, having everything ready. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to start being more intentional about being a wife, and I'm going to learn how to be the best that I can be right now. And then one day, knowing my husband, he will support whenever I find a passion and whenever I find a career that I want to invest myself into long term. And so I just started to perfect my cooking. My mom's side of the family is an Italian American, so I knew how to cook, but I never looked at it as a career option. And the next Thanksgiving came around, still was not pregnant, but I slayed Thanksgiving, and my husband was like, you need to do a cookbook. He's like, everybody is going to appreciate this, especially families like us. You know, a lot of us have to leave our families whenever we're gone for holidays. A lot of the times we get thrown into the mix. Sometimes, like what happened to us is we got dropped end of training camp, was in a whole new city for all the holidays, so we didn't have any friends. And on top of that, it was 2020. So I just decided that I was going to put myself into something that I love. I was going to create a cookbook, and I had seen this podcast. It was the Roommates podcast, which is more, I think their audience is more for men, but I was just had a lot of time by myself, and I was watching that, and they had a guest on there, and he said, you know what, there's always an excuse to not do something. You know, somebody's not going to buy your book. Nobody knows who you are. And he said, one day I just decided if I write a book, I write a book. And in 10 years, I'll have written a book. And if nobody ever bought it, I still accomplished something. So I said, you know what, I'm going to do that. And if not one person buys it, that's okay. It's still an accomplishment, something that I put myself into. And the book was a great success. And so then I dropped my Easter one. And so I just encourage all of you guys to really take a step back. I don't think had I went through the time of moving away from my family, going through kind of a little bit of infertility, which now we beat, and we have our baby in November.
Congratulations.
But God's timing was to delay me, to be uncomfortable, to push me into something that I believe is my calling. It's serving others. I believe that when just coming from an Italian family, the table is where everybody is welcome. It's where everybody feels comfortable. And that's my way of like serving others. So
Awesome.
The book is A Country Girl's Guide to Thanksgiving. And yeah, I'm just happy to be here. So
Great. And our last speaker, Brooke. And you guys know this, and I'm just interjecting because I'm a person that's committed to the truth. We're going to let you guys speak about all these things, so don't feel like you have to stuff it all in, because I do the same
I'm
thing.
like, how do I follow up all of this?
Yeah, I saw your face, and I'm like, you don't have to stuff it all in, because we have all these questions that people want to know. So introduce yourself.
Well, I just want to commend all of you ladies. Your stories are really impeccable. I'm pretty new to this community. My name is Brooke Mackey. I am the CEO of the Mackey firm. My book is called The Mommy Influence. I am also the Chicago curator for Cavassier. So we had a good time last night. Thanks, Denisha, for bringing me on. So, I mean, when you say about your scripture that you just wrote about how, you know, almost like alignment, you know, and I didn't know where I would be or where I would be in my life at this particular date and time. And so when Denisha asked me to be a part of this conference, I was like, oh my God, I'm supposed to be down there anyway. And so everything is just kind of happening in alignment. And I share that to say in my book, The Mommy Influence, really came to me last year. And it was pretty much my journey of going from hot, single, independent, fun, party girl, you know, just gaining my independence. And in the midst of that, I met my wonderful partner, who we share a 2-year-old now. He's a retired NFL player. And I was like, okay, it was my journey of basically transitioning and pivoting into, you know, trying to become, you know, everything that I felt like I should be, but still owning my own identity. So the Mommy Influence is basically my story on how I pivoted from being not just an influencer, but still owning the mommy title. So building an influential brand while still being an influential mommy. So there it is.
Awesome. You did it. So the first question is going to be for Kim Mathis. So pass the mic down. Okay, so when deciding to speak on your trauma, how did you decide how much you would or would not reveal?
Oh, that's easy. I had to reveal it all. Because in order for me to get my healing, I had to tell the truth. You know, when you go to
Right.
court, they say you tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
So help
So
you.
help me God.
Yes.
And I was literally laid out on the floor on my face before God. Lord, what do I do? Tell me what I say. Tell it all. Now, I was respectable. I didn't tell anybody's name. I didn't put anybody in an uncomfortable position. But I did tell it all. And I will say that Dope Girl is not just a story about addiction, but it also channels us to find our inner truth. When we're talking about playing to win, the way we play to win is we show up as our authentic selves. And that's it. That's literally it.
Awesome. The next question is going to be for Vanita. So this is a question that many of you might have books in you that you want to get out and that I want to ask and that I know a lot of ladies want to ask. Self-publishing or a publisher? How
Yes.
did you decide which route to take?
I had to go self-publishing because, well, it was quicker, and I had waited long enough. So I needed to get this information out. We've been married 28 years, praise God.
Yes. Congratulations to you, because it's a decision every day.
And I wanted this, yes. And I wanted women, wives to know, like right now, what it takes to just be successful in marriage. It's not easy, as we know. And then when you're married to an NFL player, that's a whole nother animal. But it can work. So I needed it out, and I chose self-publishing because I needed it out like yesterday.
Right, good. Sydney, you're next up. So the question is, what was your daily process? We know you did this cookbook, and I know it's pictures involved. I imagine recipes, different things. What was your daily or weekly process? How did you lay that out? Sometimes we don't have actionable steps. We know what we want to do in our minds, but we don't have okay, today I should do this. How did you arrive to what your process would be? And what would you or would you not, follow-up question, do next time in your next book for your next holiday?
Okay, so there's a few recipes, well, a lot of the recipes in there are family recipes, and my family doesn't measure anything. It's a little bit of this, a lot of this, you know. And when I was making the cookbook, I had to go through and remake those recipes like 3 or 4 times to get the measurements right, because I'd be like, oh, that's not enough of this or too much of this. So that's how I started, was going through, and I had this big folder that I would just go through, and I'd be like, okay, for all of the desserts, this is the exact measurements that I came down with. And so that was the first thing. And then I just had a full calendar that was laid out. So this week would be all of the prepping. It would be going to the grocery store. I mean, this was like making the Thanksgiving meal 3 times over in the summer to get this cookbook perfect. So I laid everything out like that. Then I started to take photography lessons because I took all my own photos. So I invested a little bit of money, bought a camera, and I had to play around with that. So I tried to schedule everything out as well as I could. And then I took the photography. So I would do, in the mornings, I would cook like a certain amount of the dishes. And then at night, I would be up until like 2 in the morning editing, putting things together, because it was hard for me to stop and put it down. And I had to realize, like, sometimes when you are writing a book or you own your own business, I'm sure a lot of you guys know this, it's so much harder to step away because work is at your house, or it could be at your house, so you don't know when to separate. I did a lot of that during training camp, which gave me a lot of it filled a lot of my time. I think with my next books moving forward, I would allow more time. I would probably use a bigger kitchen. There's a lot of things that I would go back and change, but I just had to make do with what I had and figure it out.
And you did it twice.
Yes, twice.
Good job. Good job. Brooke, the next question is for you. So, becoming an influencer, huge hot topic. I'm glad that one of us is capitalizing on it, because a lot of times we get capitalized on trying to get in that space. So we're going to be coming to you for advice. I'm sure it has a lot of parts to it. What resources did you use initially? And what are some things or some people that you might follow that say, okay, they have a good blueprint and I'm going to tweak it this way? How did you go about creating that and then writing a book about it, of all things?
Sure. So really, like even the title of this segment, owning your story and showing up as being your authentic self, that's what I was. I just was me. And I was almost like, because I think when we were talking yesterday, someone had brought up like how many people care about what people think of you, and so I feel like that played a big part. And I was so like I was in the really transition part of my career when I start owning that thing, and I got pregnant. Right? And so I'm like, how am I pregnant representing a liquor brand? I'm like, that don't go. So for literally, my friend is in the back, she knows, I kept my pregnancy a secret for about 7 months. And people would come up to me and be like, are you pregnant? Because I asked God, I'm like, I don't want it, like, let me be able to cover myself as long as I could, but it showed in my face, and I couldn't deny that. And I say that to say, when you own your story, when you own where you are in your life and that part of your journey, that is your brand. You are your brand. You promote, you wear your brand. You know, no one can tell you, oh, this is the blueprint or this is how you do. When you show up, like, this is me, this is how I am, your brand will speak for itself. If you want to become an influencer, or it's not even about becoming an influencer, it's about owning what it is that you do. So if you have a book, if you are, an event planner or whatever it is that your task is, that's your brand that you influence people to buy into, right? So in becoming that, I think no matter how small or how big, a lot of times people get caught up in social media. Now, my social media played a big part in my success. However, sometimes we get caught up in the numbers and the followers, but it only takes one. It only takes one person to recognize who you are, believe in your brand. So don't get caught up in, oh, I don't have 1 million followers on Instagram, or I don't have, 1 million or 2 million impressions like some of these celebrities do. Because at the end of the day, when you own your brand and you own what it is that you're selling or doing, people will buy into not only what you're selling, but they'll buy into you. So that's the most.
Awesome. So this next question is for Leonitra Davis, but I can hand her my mic. Okay. Teamwork, let's go. Now that you've written your book, do you feel you have more stories in you? What's next, or is there a sequel to Dropping the Picture and Holding Your Light?
There is a sequel to Drop the Picture and Hold Your Light, but in between, I'm working on a book with my daughters. My oldest daughter is 21. We have an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old. So that book is going to be about, just love between a mother and her daughters, and how they inspired me to be myself in my dark skin, and I inspired them to embrace their hair, their body type, and my youngest struggled with being the youngest, and I'm the youngest of 3 girls. So I recognize the struggle of comparing yourself to your older sisters. And one of my sisters is a nurse, and the other one is an accountant, and always being compared to them. So, but my sequel to Drop the Picture and Hold Your Light is going to be about just restoration of family, marriage, and after healing, and becoming free from my past, how God restored me.
Awesome. I know other ladies on the panel have second books and follow-ups. I'm always about the pre-promotion. Anybody that knows me, I'm like, oh, you're doing something? I'm there. Okay, this is my friend. She's doing, wait, what is that again? So I want to let you guys talk about that second book if you have a second book coming.
I do have a second book coming, and it's called A Liar in Stilettos. And it is a woman's guide to walking in truth. because this is confirmation, Lord, that everything that we're saying here today about showing up as our authentic selves, people are not who they post to be.
Right.
Okay.
Can you repeat that for the people in the back, in the front?
People are not who they post to be. Okay, so much of my book is like a conversation between girlfriends. And when you go to lunch and you sit down and y'all get raw and dirty and you telling each other the real, that's what this book is about. It is not about hiding face. It is about a woman's guide to walking in truth. And look at the Lord, because the very first chapter is called Comparison Liar. And she just talked about the struggle of being compared. And so that is God's word to me that this is needed.
Yes, absolutely.
That's good. Well, I just released my book in April, so I'll be going on tour. And I just have to share, I went from NFL wife to NFL mom. My
Wow.
son.
Congratulations.
My son is with Denver Broncos now, so anybody in Denver, holla at me. But okay, we'll talk later.
And the Davises are an amazing family.
Okay. And so I am, though, working on another book, but right now I'm going on tour in between, football games with my book, Flags, Fumbles, and Touchdowns.
Awesome. Sydney?
And I released this past Easter it's more like the Italian American spin on Easter dinner, so that's already available. And I was planning on doing the Christmas cookbook, but then having a baby in season and everything, I'm going to postpone that till
Let's
next
cancel
year.
Christmas this year.
Look, God put you in positions where He's like, speak it, right?
Right.
So, put you on the spot. So, as I said, I'm new to this community, and again, I went from independent, ladies rocking,
Right.
and when my baby came, I thought something that I was almost ashamed of, what will people think of me and this, that, and the other. It really changed my life, and it made me more of a woman that I never thought I probably could have been. The things that I was running away from, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know people would still support me. I got even more support and even, a bigger audience to connect with women, because I know that that's my ministry, right? And so I was like, okay, God, and so when He put that seed in me, okay, you need to write this. It's not a big book, but it's I felt like I needed to write that to get past that moment in my life. And so now, like I said, I'm new to this community and kind of dealing with an NFL player. I'm talking to ladies yesterday, how do I do this? And so I was in the midst of an argument, I felt and I was I started in my phone, and I started writing my notes, and I was I'm gonna write the family influence. So I haven't really, I started one chapter, but that's my next journey. And like you said, just being in that moment of where you are, and I'm learning, I'm still trying to digest and pivot and transition into, what a wife should be, or what this, but in all, I still want to, God told me to be my authentic self, to show up how I would show up and not conform into what I'm supposed to look like, or how would they accept me, or this, that, and the other. So the family influence, I don't know when it's going to come out, but I'm speaking it out now, so now
That's
it's got to
right.
happen.
That's right. Well, thank you, ladies. There is a scripture that says that God makes us fully equipped for the work that He has for us to perform on the earth. And I want to encourage you guys, because you guys have been fully equipped, and you fully equipped us. I think we might have 1 minute or so for a question. I want people to walk away with tangible steps. So if there's something that you want to ask, I'm going to get you a microphone. You can take mine and ask the question to the ladies.
Thank you, ladies. Talk about confirmation. This was huge for me, as I've been saying I'm writing a book for 3 years. And it's all in my notes. It's everywhere. So my question, I like the question of your process, but I would love to hear a little bit more of when you actually started writing it, what did that look like? Was it typing? Was it, I would just love to hear a little bit more of when you actually made it become a book.
My process took me longer because I would write, and then I would put it away and say, God, I'm not sharing this. Like, I'm done. So it took me some time, but I started off on paper, and then I transitioned to my computer. But I realized that my process, everybody's process is not the same. So I had to own my truth in private before I can publish it and own it in public, if that makes sense. So everybody's process is different, but I'll just tell you just to pray. Like I prayed through. I'm a very spiritual person, Masika tell you. I prayed through everything. So I had to pray through each step of my process. I had to talk to myself like, girl, you got to get it together. God, you are holding up some blessings. So, like I said, it's different for everybody.
It is different for everybody. And I will tell you that how many of y'all know that everything we go through is not just for us, but it's so that other people can heal from our scars? So the process for me was at least 30 minutes a day. But I can attest to what Sydney was saying, because I was so pregnant with this story because I tried to write it twice before and I failed, that when I sat down to really get my thoughts together, it was like I felt God tapping me on the shoulder like this. Your kids get on your nerves, be like, Mama, Mama. And it was like, okay, Lord, I hear you. So I called my mentor, who is a pastor and an author of 17 books. And she told me, write 30 minutes a day, at least 30 minutes a day. For me, it's easier to do it on the computer because papers get lost, things get lost in transition. I have OCD, so I'm always throwing stuff away. I don't want nobody to accidentally touch my stuff. So I would say to do it on the computer, me personally, because it's so much easier to revise, to edit, to cut, but to write at least 30 minutes a day. And I will tell you this, as I am finishing up a master's degree in creative writing in December. Thank you. Do not get attached to any particular sentence or word. Don't get attached. And that's one of the biggest pieces of advice that I gave you. You might like it, but it might not go or make sense. Cut it. Let it go. He'll give you something else.
Well, like you, I was writing my book for many years, and I would write a little and stop, write a little and stop. But then in January, as I stated earlier, when my brother passed, I said, oh, no, I need to finish this book. My book starts when we were in college, and I talk a little bit about how we met. And it was like my book had no ending because life continued to happen. My children were getting older. I talk about how I cheered for them. I talk about how I encourage my family. I talk about living my life in seasons, letting go of a certain season, letting go of certain people, because sometimes when God is moving you into a different season, you have to let certain people go, certain places go. And I was stuck there for a little while, but I just decided, I gave myself a deadline, and I said, whatever it takes, however long it takes, this book will be done and published by April, period. And it happened.
I feel like my book's a little different because it's a cookbook, so it doesn't require a ton of writing, but I just wouldn't force anything. And then if I'd be driving in the car and something would come to me, I would just write it in my notes. And then I would go back and add it in there. I would think what helped me the most was publicly telling people that I have a book and it's coming out, because now I have this I have to deliver. I have to get it out there. People are expecting it. That's just my personality. So I think having people that held me accountable really kept me on track. And it's kind of like what you talked about yesterday, self-care. That was my self-care, putting in time and doing something that was bringing me joy. I just looked at it, instead of it being a chore, it being something that I got to do.
To answer your question, Crystal, my process was this thing came in me, and you talk about being pregnant, and I felt like it was a pregnancy that needed to give birth, right? And so what happened was, it's oh, I have events. Oh, I have to cater to this man. Oh, I have a I have a toddler, you know, it's like I had no time to kind of like really sit down and go into an office and be like, okay, this is my time. So in between all of that, what I found to do is, I don't know what your sleep pattern is, but when everybody was asleep, that was my time to write. Really, it was like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. I would always pray. I would say, God, what should I say in this chapter? I want to put you first. What do I need to share in this chapter? And like, it will come to me. It will come to me in the middle of the night. It will come to me when I would travel, maybe on the plane, whenever I was able to have a moment of quietness where nothing else was going on. Those are the moments that I took advantage of in writing. And I should have wrote on a computer because I be a mess with these phones, but I would do it like in my notes. That's kind of ghetto, but yeah, so I did it in my notes, but the publishing part and like the editing part, who I was working with, she was like, girl, they don't care about all of that. I was like, no, I read this and this is an error and I don't want people to judge me. But I didn't know, like, this whole like book writing thing is totally different. Now I look at books differently, like, okay, a typo or this, you know, that's expected, especially when it's, you know, when it's authentic and it's coming from your true self. Like, you don't have to be so hard on yourself, like it has to be perfect, because I was doing that and that prolonged like the release of it. Like every time I put a release out, I was like, okay, let's do a pre-order, like because it wasn't ready. So I would say not to be so hard on yourself and like just get it done and take those moments where you have those self moments, even if it's like when everyone is asleep and it's quiet, you're on a plane. Like, take advantage of those moments. If you don't have your computer, get your phone out, put it in your notes, save it, you know, to your email, and like that was a strategy that I used.
Time for one more question, so I need somebody.
Listening to you ladies have really changed me. I've had a book in my head since our first Super Bowl in 1987. Wow. And I have the name of my book, which is Skeletons in My Closet. But I've never had the courage to even thought about, I have a lot of notes scattered all over the place, but I never thought about even putting it out there because of the embarrassment. Or I thought I should have been embarrassed. And I'm 61 years old, and to see these young ladies just talk and all the things that you all talked about, my years in the NFL, I've been in there, I guess, longer than some of you all have been born. August is going to make us 40 years married. Wow. And it wasn't easy. And this young lady here, I've talked to her a lot, but it's very encouraging. I think I'm going to go ahead. I have a daughter that's 40 years old now, and every time she said, "Mommy, come on, I'll write the book for you." So I tell her everything that I want in the book, and then sometimes I get embarrassed, and she's like, "Why are you still with him?" I'm like, well, you know, I didn't know anything else. My parents were married for 60 years, so I didn't know nothing different from what we do. But now we're on a whole different level of marriage. Mm-hmm. So I left a couple of times, yes. That's why it last that when she was talking, I can tell you it's not. I was gone for 11 years. And I said, I went to college just like you did, and I took up my career and I started teaching, because I'm a school teacher. I was a school teacher. I started teaching, and he was so upset because I wouldn't go back to doing, you know, all the other stuff that he was doing. Let them take care of you. But I had to do for myself, for my children. So, yes, I think I'm going to get that pen and my paper back out, and I'm going to finish Skeletons in My Closet.
So, ladies, this was amazing. What keeps coming to me is there's something about being pregnant with a thing. And I just want to encourage you guys, anybody that's been pregnant or cared for a newborn child, you know that there are phases. Sometimes it's a phase of conception, or getting ready for the adoption, or getting ready for things to bring that child. Sometimes you're in the first trimester and you're sick. You're nauseated about it. You don't want to tell that thing. And then you go into the second trimester and you're feeling a little better and you kind of got your footing and you're trying to figure it out. And you're like, but I kind of got this. Okay, I'm ready. Then the third trimester comes and you're like, oh my God, it is real. It is here. But it's the labor. whatever the labor looks like. It's forgotten. The push, the get them out, the cut. When it comes out, it's amazing how God wipes all the process and the pain of the process and the up and down out and off the page, and you look at the beauty that's laid before you. So, wherever you are in your pregnancy, you're at the part of your pregnancy that you need to be. Don't rush it. Because if you have a premature labor, that comes with a whole nother set of pain. It'll get there. I'm a 2-time NICU champion. It'll get there. But it's something different about waiting for and seeing the process through. So thank you, ladies, for showing us the evidence of the beautiful babies that you birthed in your books. Everybody go support and get these books. And that book, I expect to see. Because what the baby that you've been holding on to is something that's going to foster something different in me. And I sit in earnest expectation of what God has for me, and I want what's mine. So I need that book out of you. Thank you, ladies, so much. And I'm excited for you coming. We're excited for you being here.